5, 4, 3, 2, 1, action.
From the beginning?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know if you were sorry. Have you ever walked into a job or a college interview and wanted to sound professional or interesting, but you just can't find the perfect words to say?
Story of my life.
We've been working on this thing called language since we were born.
Now, language, according to Webster, is the method of human communication, either spoken or written, consisting of the use of words in a structured or conventional way.
But can we really define the amazingness that is language by a dictionary definition that was probably written 500 years ago by a stuck-up hermit scholar?
Probably with mama problems. Well, what more is communication other than how we talk to one another?
What more is communication than how we talk to one another? You can't put a dictionary definition on top of trying to find the perfect words to ask out the perfect person. I mean, can you really put a definition to the struggle, to the emotions of finding the words to tell a loved one that someone they love has passed on? Can you put that much emotion and passion and feeling into a couple words placed in a musty old textbook?
Whoa. Wait, Rose. What if we could take this language thing and condense it into something beautiful?
You mean like poetry?
Yeah. Like, a rap.
You want me to what? Poetry is so much more than rap. Poetry is beautiful. Poetry is in everything. It's everywhere. It's in rap. It's in literature. It's in slogans. It's the most condensed form of literature that we have. Poetry is the purest form of literature.
Well, why poetry? What makes it so special?
Well, what makes poetry so special is different for me than it's different for you. For me, poetry is special because there's so much passion and so much thought put into every word, every letter. If one letter is out of place, the whole poem is a miss.
What makes poetry special to me is that it's short.
Jake, reality check? A J. Alfred Prufrock? I'm not saying that literature doesn't have passion and that writers don't spend a ton of their time trying to figure out the perfect word. Just with poetry, it's more compact and it allows you to get right to the heart of things and focus on the emotion and the experience.
So, basically a chick flick on paper.
The heck are you reading? Oh my gosh, poems have so much more to them. I mean, they can be about tying your shoe, Billy Collins. I mean, there are so many subjects about poems. They can be about the people you love or the people you hate, how you feel about this or that. They can be everyday things. I mean, you can write a poem about Disney satire.
Alright, so we have a basic understanding of what poetry is, but how does a poet go about writing a poem? Well, there's about as many methods to writing poetry as there is poems. That said, there are a lot of basic overall concepts that a lot of poets cover.
Jake, you can't put a formula on how to write a poem.
False. Typically, a poet can be attributed to a specific theme or era of writing. For example, Walt Whitman and Thoreau can be attributed to the Transcendentalist or Romantic period, whereas writers like Frost and T.S. Eliot can be attributed to the Modernist period.
No! Every poem is special and unique to each individual person and how they read it.
Well, that may be true, Rose, but the only real difference between a poet is how they implement their elements of poetry.
Elements? I survived chemistry last year. There was no periodic table of literature.
Actually, there are more elements to literature than we have time to talk about. But that said, some elements are a little bit more important when we're dealing with poetry. For example, the rhyming scheme, the meter, and the use or absence of rhetorical devices. These can greatly influence the themes of the poetry, the experience of reading the poetry, and just basically how good the poetry is in general.
But does any of that really matter? I mean, it's more of how the poem makes you feel and the individual.
Well, you may have a point there, Rose. However, if the author fails to coherently organize his or her thoughts to the reader, how can they expect to create an experience that the reader can empathize with?
So, poetry is like rhyme to you? Hang out with Dr. Seuss on your weekends?
Well, rhyming, or lack thereof, in a poem can really influence how it is read and how it feels to the reader. For example, Dr. Seuss writes very short, simple rhyming structures for his intended audience.
Want some green eggs and ham with that? And what were you talking about parking meters for? Those things give me nightmares.
Okay, meter being the way in which a poet organizes his or her stanzas can really impact the poem's tone and feel to the reader. Do you think Shakespeare's work would have endured this long had he not displayed his mastery of the English language?
Shakespeare's work has endured this long because his characters and his plot are beautiful.
And
Because are you trying to make me argue that his work isn't beautiful? Because if you are, you bet your bootstraps I will chug a water balloon at you.
we consider Shakespeare to be so excellent because he is very successful at elegantly and artfully creating and portraying his objectives to the reader, and because those objectives are still very prevalent today.
I guess you didn't get the memo to rip that page right out of your book.
Well, didn't you say that we all appreciate poetry in our own way?
Not like a math equation with always having a solution. I mean, math is the bane of my existence. Oh.
Exactly. So, poetry can appeal to all of us, the hopeless romantics and the eggheads among us alike.
That maybe just a little bit might be true. Poetry.
May we present Pretty Poet Anonymous.
And Prince Charming by Chris Gibson.
Where have all the pretty poets gone? A real poet are you. Just charismatic over everything you serve, showcasing a rainbow that folds the perfect worldwide perspective. I'm talking about flawless literature here. No typos, no muss. Just a page full of boredom and rust. And thank you for having Loonsta all up in my head. It's like reading a poetry lesson from the extras of The Walking Dead. An image, frozen cold, just waiting for inspiration to hit, like Al Capone. I'm bored of your flora flamboyant language, just rocking me like stones. A home where I am forced to open up a dictionary, a thesaurus, written in Braille, wondering what you just said. Hakuna Matata, what a wonderful day! The best rocket pen in the USA today, launching words like no tomorrow. A fool with wordplay and sorrow. A godlike guinea pig. Genius, delegating poetry like politician style. Perhaps one day you will become a famous writer. Burning books like a cigarette lighter. Until then, enjoy pushing your pen as if it were cocaine, snorting up and cutting up the food chain in vain. Patronizing and ignoring those, for better or worse. A solo cup stuck inside another cup. Correct me if you will. It's no big deal, just don't forget to offer me the same respect that I would offer you. Until then, my pretty, poetic friend, I bow for no one.
I know what you're thinking. How is he so perfect? Yes, my hair does fall just right every morning. Yes, my muscles are defined beyond what you are used to. Yes, it is my smile that is making your knees weak. Before you run off making a checklist of all my qualities your man just does not have, you should know a few things about me. Like, this took a lot of late nights and patience. This took a lot of redrafting and sketching. You see, my creators took a lot of hours to make the character you know as Prince Charming. When Disney commissioned me, my goals were simple: be awesome at everything, including, but not limited to, horseback riding, monster fighting, navigating, fencing, and being able to lift a woman in an 80-pound dress, but above all else, always rescue the girl. It's not as glorious as it sounds. But don't get me wrong, it definitely has its perks, like not having a job or a personality. But I'm wondering, how many princesses have to be rescued from evil witches before one of them just finally asks me for my real name? Not that I'm opposed to my title, but of all the creative geniuses that are paid so many millions of dollars, is this really the best they can come up with? I've never said anything charming, or any line at all for that matter. But if I'm going to be constantly reincarnated in your child's favorite fairy tale, why not come up with something a little more creative, like kind-hearted musician, or slightly humorous bartender, or very educated cage fighter? As if a woman can only be rescued by mute royalty. I'm not sure what they're implying. I googled myself recently. Wikipedia defines me as a stock character. I'm not sure how this can be when I've battled every warlock and dragon, traveled through every haunted forest and forbidden castle. It goes on to say I am not distinguishable from other men. But I don't really know how that happened. When I was the only one brave enough to kiss Snow White when her cold, lifeless body couldn't handle some dang bad fruit. Yet the 7 men she lived with weren't brave enough to step up to the plate, and we can all recite their name like the Lord's Prayer. I've had an identity crisis lately. Girls these days are offended by the idea of being rescued, especially by a Prince Charming, when all I have done for the past 50 years is outdated. I've got no story to fall back on. I am at a loss. But if I could, I would take all the detail put into these muscles and I would write myself a backstory so you would know the pressure that's in the royal family to be married. And I don't actually want to be out here in the first place, and the fact that I hate horses and singing, yet here we are. And if I could take all the graph I used to define my jawline, I would write dialogue with the princesses I have met, because forever after is a long time to just sit silent. But of all these things, I would take the colors that were pressed into me to make me so brilliant, and I would paint myself a new scene where I can just sit undefined, black and white. And maybe someone can see how drained I've become and rescue me for once. These kinds of dreams are a bit three-dimensional, so I'll just saddle up my horse and sing a song with some woodland creatures. I mean, I'm sure there's a princess somewhere that needs saving.